Great. So first off, everybody in the audience, welcome. Welcome panelists, welcome Flavio, and welcome to everybody who's on the meet. This is the Consulting Bootcamp 2022 organized by 180 Degrees Consulting IIT Madras in collaboration with Highbridge Management Academy. First off, thank you for spending your Saturday late afternoon with us. We know it's tempting to go outside and have fun, but thanks a lot for coming here. We are delighted to have you on board. So the main intention of the Consulting Bootcamp is twofold: to give you a consulting entails, what kinds of things do consultants do, and what exactly they're solving, and get you started on the consulting interview process in India. Essentially, we've divided the whole event into 4 prongs. The first would be a quick introduction to all our esteemed panelists and 180 Degrees Consulting. Then we deep dive into consulting in itself, the key aspects of a consultant's toolkit, and this will be delivered by Flavio. The second will be a set of pre-decided questions that will be asked to the panelists, encompassing common topics that have popped up in multiple questions. And third would be the most awaited session of them all. We will be split in breakout rooms and panelists will guide you on how to solve a case. And you guys can get a feel for how a case interview would be. And finally, we conclude with an Ask Me Anything live question section in Mentimeter. And we will summarize all our key learnings as we go along. Once again, thank you for being here, and we'd be happy to start. Let's begin. So, before we deep dive into consulting, we'll sort of give you a quick introduction to 180 DC and a bit about the club 180 Degrees Consulting IIT Madras itself. Fazil, can you move on to the next 2 slides? Yes. So who are we? 180 Degrees Consulting is the world's largest university-based student consultancy, where our mission primarily lies with socially active organizations. Our main aim is to help organizations that have an amount of social impact to their mission. Why do we exist? Because NGOs and social organizations are, in most cases, are not able to afford the kind of consulting services that established firms charge. So this is where 180 Degrees comes in, fills in that market gap where it bridges the gap between the needs of unmet needs of socially conscious organizations and consulting services. And how are we present? Where are we present? Fazil, next slide. So we are present in 30 plus countries in 170 plus branches. And this is a global organization, and each university has its own club. And we are the IIT Madras Club, the entire global leadership team of 180 DC. So moving on, next, yeah. So we are a team of 52 engineering, social sciences, and business majors at IIT Madras, and we span the platitude of undergraduate, postgraduate, and graduate levels. We recruit specific consultants on an ad hoc basis, and the selection process is quite competitive. We have completed 30 plus projects so far. We were established in 2017, and every semester we work on 5 to 6 engagements with a diversity of clientele, including nonprofits, social enterprises, and other companies. Finally, we partner with the internal clubs within IIT Madras, and one such partner today we have with us, Highbridge Management Academy. At IIT Madras internally, we have partnered with Pre-Incubation Cell, the Indo-German Center for Sustainability, and the Career Development Cell. And each project of ours has a consultant from an established management consulting firm who are either alumni of IIT Madras or from 180 DC, who come back as mentors to help us shape the projects for our different clients. Slide. So what kinds of clients, what kinds of people do we work with? Our clients, our global clients include a lot of common NGOs that you would have been seeing, and in the IIT Madras chapter, we have dealt with Habitat for Humanity, the Child in Need Institute, Bhumi, the disaster response NGO, Avaz, the Aphasia app, and Freestyle Rangde, AI for Birth, all of these things. Essentially, with all the work that we had done this year in 2021's Global Leadership Award, because of all the work that we had done, we were recognized as Asia Pacific's Most Improved Branch 2021. So that is it from my end about 180 DC. So now the next part of our session, when we talk about consulting, instead of giving you information that you can get off the internet, we wanted to present to you a sort of abridged version, tried and testing tips on the entire consulting journey of various people put together. We've put together a dream team, so to speak, of recently placed consult students, handpicked and curated from different backgrounds and colleges across firms. So hopefully all their insights and tips come in handy when you guys in the audience land your dream job. Starting off, to introduce our esteemed panelists, first off, I'd like to introduce the McKinsey cohort. We have with us Sankalpa, Risha, Ayush, and Siddhant. Welcome to you guys. And McKinsey is one of the oldest management consulting firms, started in 1926. I believe Flavia will talk a lot more about these management consulting firms. Going next, we have the BCG cohort, and we are joined by Aditya, Hanaga, Arushi, and Divyam. Warm welcome to you guys.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, internet always lets us down in the worst times, but good to be here. I will apologize in advance because I have one of the worst things that a speaker can have, which is a cough. And but I didn't want to miss today's workshop, so I kept it, and I will mute myself if I have to cough, right? So just bear with me, and we'll get this done. But great to be here. After which I joined SumUp, and now I'm leading Highbridge. As for my free time, I like to spend it active outdoors and with friends, right? Playing games or playing sports. And I love psychology too. 2 words about what I do. Our bootcamp is divided in 3 modules, has a case interview module, a work skills module, and a leadership module. So we are a one-stop shop. If you want to go to this career, we are with you in the first 3-4 years so that we set up you for success, right? We have a very big faculty of ex-McKinsey, Bain, BCG consultants who are really, really passionate about teaching. And this reflects in our reviews, right? So you can check out what people are saying about our bootcamp. And I just wanted to make one invitation for you today, which is to come to our day 0 of the bootcamp, either in June 4th or June 18th, where you have a full day of Highbridge workshops completely free, and you can then decide if you want to join us for the full bootcamp, right? You can register on our website, and if you have questions, just write to our team. Now, buckle up. I always say that because we have a lot of content, and please use the chat for questions, right? It's your moment to use. I always say that in competitive careers, you have no room for being for not making up your mind, right? If you're undecided about consulting, gather information, have an opinion, and focus. If you are going to go there, you have to fully focus. So ask the questions you need to make up your mind, because your competitors will have made up their minds and will be fully focused on getting the offer, right? That's the important thing, the focus. Question for you, you can use the chat. How old do you think the management consulting profession is? In the chat. 100 years, 60, 100 odd, 100, 150, 100, 120, 70, 100 plus. Very good. Actually, this group is extremely well informed. It's actually one of the groups that got the best average, right? Closest to the truth. It's actually 130 years, right? It started with a company I worked for, which is Arthur D. Little, 1886, right? Founded at the MIT by a chemist called Arthur D. Little. And before that, companies had access to engineering consulting or accounting advice, right? And tax advice, but not management consulting. This became an industry back then. Booz Allen was founded shortly after to serve governments as well as companies. And McKinsey, the famous market leader today, was founded in 1926. A curiosity is that Mr. James McKinsey, who actually founded the company, died shortly after, and the company was really shaped by a guy called Marvin Bauer, who worked until almost like 90 years old in the company. So other companies followed, and as you can see, they are closely related because alumni from one company founded other companies, right? It's very common. Consultants are very entrepreneurial, and consulting is a very reputation-based business. So a lot of times, several partners have left their companies to start their own firms. Not only the ones you see here, but hundreds and hundreds of boutique consulting firms, which leads me to my next point, which is what is the landscape today, right? You have the so-called MBB, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, strategy firms leading the space in strategy, the biggest and the most expensive consulting firms in strategy, and doing a lot of very, let's say, very important strategic work, but not only, right? We want to speak more about it next. Other international strategy firms, they are not as big as the MBB firms, but oftentimes they compete head to head, and they specialize in certain industries as well. Like Oliver Wyman is famous for corporate finance projects, and LEK has a lot of pharma clients, and so on. Boutique firms, they are even more specialized because they cannot cover the whole spectrum of potential projects very well. But if you're passionate about a certain area, maybe it's your place to be. And you often work directly with ex-partners from top companies. And the Big Four, they started in auditing and accounting, but they expanded into strategy consulting through several acquisitions. You probably heard that Monitor was bought by Deloitte, Strategy and bought by PwC, a former Booz and Company, and EY bought Parthenon. So the consulting landscape is diverse. There are lots of animals, small and big, with different specialties, and the types of projects they do can be any of those, right? Strategy firms, for instance, they take care of the architecture. Let's say if business was a building, they are the architects. They analyze, they make choices, trade-offs, they design plans, right? They make recommendations. Implementation of the strategy is like engineering, and is building according to the plan, ensuring everything is set up and working. And running the company after implementation is more like operations consulting, right? Making it more efficient, figuring out how to use resources, saving time, saving money. While you may think that MBB firms, for instance, they do only strategy consulting, actually half of their revenues come from operations and implementation projects. It's more and more common. Guys, can you please take care of the muting? Thank you. Of course, there are other types of consulting firms specialized in finance, tax, HR, etc. Now, the consulting firms, they serve different types of clients, normally large companies, but sometimes small companies too. Startups and small companies might hire consultants and provide equity instead of dollar payments. Investors hire consultants to make due diligences and assess investments on the buy side or sell side. Governments, they hire consultants to develop policy work, right, and to support governmental decisions. Pretty much all major countries of the world hire consulting firms. Countries like Saudi Arabia rely really heavily on consultants. And nonprofits. But nonprofits usually, it's common that they are pro bono work, right? Consultants, they work there, and it's good for three reasons. One, it motivates consultants who like to have social impact. Two, it keeps your team sharp and training. And three, it's also for branding. Now, I really appreciate what 180 degrees is doing, because that's exactly the reason why consultants also engage in nonprofit work, which is upskilling, right? And it's amazing that you guys, if you can participate in this project, it's always a good thing to have in your CV, and also for the experience. Now, let me ask you, why do companies or organizations hire consultants? Share in the chat with me. Let's see. For expert advice, yes. What else? To make informed decisions, taking decisions, solve problems, make better decisions, specific issues, solve problems, outsource work they don't want to do. Interesting. Provide strategic solutions. Optimization, very good. Holistic larger market share, very good. So yes, but there are many reasons actually, not only to solve problems and make decisions per se, right? We can go deeper there, and I'll show you here first level and second level reasons why consultants are hired. First, for their skills, problem solving and specialized skills, but also for their fresh eyes and independent perspective. There's value when you arrive in a new organization with fresh eyes. You see things, of course, that others are already blind for, right? And you can help them connect those things. Ability to provoke change. Companies, they must reinvent themselves as organizations all the time, but it's very hard for them to do it alone, because people get used to things how they are, and they are in a certain comfort zone, and they want to continue like that. And consultants, they come like an asteroid, sometimes hitting the planet, to provoke change. They are fast to deliver, they work really hard, and in very optimal ways. But also because of the network of experts. Sometimes you have a company, for instance, in Spain might hire consultants because the consultants already did a similar project in Chile or Australia. Flexible staff increase. If you have a high workload, you might hire consultants to get it done and get it done quickly without a lot of bureaucracy to hire people. You can train your internal staff using consultants, right? Capability transfer is a very hot thing in consulting, to explain, to show people how the project was done so they can do it in the future. And to bring ideas across industries, across companies. Sometimes you learn something super useful in finance, in a financial player, that can be applied to a nonprofit or a retail player. So for those reasons, companies hire consultants. Of course, there are less explicit reasons as well. Sometimes consultants are hired just to put a stamp on a decision that has already been made by the company, to legitimate, to say like, oh, we're doing that because McKinsey told us to. But of course, the companies, they are very proud of having an independent view. They will not be issuing any opinions if they don't really agree with the decision. So if the companies agree, then they will validate that decision. Now, companies in consulting, they have strong values. It's a very, very strong value orientation, because it's a trust business, right? Imagine if you're opening all your heart, your secrets, to external people who serve competitors. They go there and they can serve your direct competitors later. So how can you ensure that this industry will ever work, right? With very, very strong values. They have values also to attract the best people, create value for clients, collaborate, and of course, have the highest ethical standards and confidentiality. Sorry, I can see a question here. Can we understand that companies in different sectors outsource consultants instead of hiring them. I haven't heard about the term outsourced consultants, because you hire consultants, they are already outsourced, right? So they are not from your company. Normally, you can have internal consultants, but normally it's already an outsourced service. Let me know if I misunderstood the question. What is more important for solving a case? Using a framework or simply giving feasible solutions for solving a problem? I think you will speak more about solving cases later on today. So let's stay on first this introduction to consulting, and I'm sure that all the panelists will be able to have an opinion on that. Now, in terms of career progression, the good thing is that consulting has a very predictable, right? Very clear career progression, where you know more or less how long you're going to stay in each level, and that's where the policy up or out enters, right? Either you are promoted to the next level or you are invited to leave. That's how it works, right? It's a pyramid, and there is pressure for people to progress. Otherwise, they have to make room for other people who might progress. So that's the up or out policy. And you can see here, you can start as an intern or as a junior consultant. You might start after your MBA or PhD, right? So you might enter in any of those four first levels, and then progress to manager, stay as manager, progress to principal, which is also called AP or associate principal, or junior partner, partner and senior partner. So you can become a senior partner in 15 years, right? And you get very, very good money for your job, because as I said, consultants, they are very demanded by companies, and companies pay a lot for those services, right? So this is, of course, US dollars for the US positions, but you definitely can research how much money this translates in India, right? So you can check it out. Very good. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons of the consulting career. What do you think are those? Like, tell me in the chat, what have you heard about the pros, or what is a pro for you and what is a con? Share with me a little bit. Travel can be a pro or a con, depends. I'd have good compensation, that's what we just saw. Some are traveling, okay, cool, great compensation. Hectic lifestyle, definitely a con. Multi-country visit, that's a pro, I guess. Serat, long work duration, yes, that's a very typical con. Increased communication skills, good. Wider horizon of knowledge. Travel, terrible work-life balance, I'm gonna talk about that. Networking with smart individuals, yes. Good exposure to business world, yes, this word is used a lot in consulting. Highly paid but stressful at the same time. Yeah, oh wow, okay, too many comments for me to read, but awesome. I see that you guys are quite well informed. I will list what is my view of the pros and cons of the consulting career. So you will do interesting, challenging, and diverse work, right? Projects can last sometimes just 2 weeks, and you change the topic, the industry, sometimes 1 month, up to 6 months normally, right? Rarely the projects go above 6 months, but it can happen in some companies. You deliver impact and you help people. People get really grateful when you help them in their most pressing issues. It's an expensive service, but yes, people do appreciate it. You work with very passionate and smart people. As you know, it's very challenging to get a consulting job. So when you get there, you look around yourself and you will see a lot of talent. You get early exposure to senior leaders and enjoy this rapid progression. And that's completely insane compared to the industry, right? Compared to startups, you can't progress as fast if your startup is very successful. If you join it early and it grows a lot, you become a manager and director in that startup. But of course, there's a risk that the startup will not grow as fast. And compared to the industry, is like nothing like it, right? You will, after 5 or 8 years in consulting, you will be progressing to partner as and making probably a lot more money than anyone that started in the industry. You earn a high salary, you travel, stay at great hotels, and you get sponsored for the MBA in some companies. As you know, MBAs can be very expensive. I'm also coming from a developing country, Brazil, and for us to pay an MBA in dollars, it's unpayable almost. So the cons, you have a lot to get done. If you think you were busy until now in college, get ready to be double as busy, because consulting teams, they are very small, also to stay nimble and agile. And therefore, you will get work compared to your peers in the industry. You'll get work for 2 people, not only 1. Okay, you will be under pressure because things have deadlines and they have to be delivered, and every day matters. Every week counts. You will spend time away from home when staffed away, and sometimes you don't like that. You will navigate projects without knowing what's ahead of you. So it's a bit unpredictable, and things can change quite fast. And you can meet clients who don't like consultants. Not everybody will be waiting with their arms open, because people have diverse experiences with consultants, and they might feel threatened sometimes by someone who's coming and first changing things, right? As we saw, agents of change. Second, potentially auditing their work and uncovering mistakes and flaws, right? And uncovering competence as well. So some people might be feel threatened and not be sponsoring the project. So my job is to give you a balanced view. Everything in life is an equilibrium. You get a lot, but you also have to give a lot, right? In anything. But the thing is, the main con that people say, which is having a lot of work, I want to give you another perspective on it, right? Because you only learn how to be productive, really productive, if you are submitted to pressure, right? That's when you develop the strategies and tactics to cope with an overload of work. That's when you develop a anti-bullshit radar. That's when you develop a sense of where is value. That's when you develop communication skills to align very well what you have to do, what has to be done, what are the expectations, so that you don't waste a minute doing something the wrong direction. And people going to the industry, they don't have this pressure. They don't have the opportunity to learn under these conditions. Because if you have too much time, I often say work is like a gas, right? It will expand and take the time that you allow it to take. 2 hours, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, right? So being under pressure and having to deliver and being among very also high achieving individuals will make you better for the rest of your career. Okay, so it's a double-edged sword. High workload is what makes you more productive and yield dividends for the rest of your career. And sometimes even just 2 years in consulting already gives you the benefits. Now we are approaching the end because we need to go very soon. Yeah, exactly, 5 minutes. Yeah, so I will wrap this up. Question is, what do analysts and associates do? Well, if you look at the activities on the screen, check it out. What do you think they do? I will give you away the answers because we are running out of time, but that's normally what you'll be doing You're going to be interviewing experts, visiting operations, either the factory or call centers or whatever operations you have. Support preparing letters of proposal to new clients, studying reports, and interviewing managers and directors as well in the client. But not only, you'll be creating models, you'll be cleaning and analyzing data sets, creating presentations, participating in meetings. We call it problem-solving meetings in consulting, and we're going to help in internal initiatives. I will skip this just to get to the point of this one. Well, consultants, they have to show three qualities. They have to have high curiosity, intellectual caliber, processing power to solve tough problems. They need the drive, the stamina, the energy. As I said, there's a lot to be done, and they need people skills. You cannot be a jerk in consulting. You can be a jerk in finance and banking sometimes, but not in consulting. You will only progress if everybody from above and below gives you good feedback. And finally, talking a little bit about the exit opportunities. Where can you work after consulting? Pretty much everywhere. They are in high demand in many fields because they are problem solvers. And you probably know a few famous names who work for consulting, like Sundar Pichai, CEO of Alphabet, John Danaher from eBay and Nike, John Legend, a singer who was actually curiously also a consultant at BCG, Jane Fraser, CEO of McKinsey, Indra Nooyi, ex-CEO of Pepsi, and so on, right? The CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, James Gorman, and Sheryl Sandberg, CEO of Meta. If you want to go to start your own company, there's no better place to start than in consulting, also because a lot of unicorns were founded by ex-consultants, right? This is just a sample of them, because consulting gives you the skills and gives you the credentials, actually, to talk to investors and so on. All right, we reached the end of our short presentation today. Consultants are agents of change. As I said, it's a beautiful profession. You have to work hard to earn the opportunity to advise the world's leaders in their most pressing issues, right? It's a privilege to be a consultant and also a great responsibility because it will impact millions and millions of lives. Let me check if there are any questions before I hand over to the team. How can a student from not top tier college become a management consultant? Well, some students with not from target universities, they achieve this goal by showing great extracurriculars, great work experience or internship impact. But you have to show that you are great. You are top of your cohort, no matter where you go, so that the companies want to talk to you and want to give you a chance at cracking it. So we see consistently people from non-target schools going to consulting as well, but it's harder. It's harder. You don't have one big brand behind you, and you have to compensate for it. How can you get internships at the reputed consulting firms? How can you build a profile for that? So you have to show achievement. You have to participate in competitions, win competitions, for instance, but you can do volunteering work in leadership positions, right? You have to have spikes and clear signs on your profile that you are ambitious, that you go above and beyond what your peer group goes, right? And then you get the chance to get an interview and you have to crack the cases, right? And that's where the hybrid bootcamp comes in, for instance. And finally, Nadav, is it better to get placed after bachelor's or get placed after MBA is better? Well, both are possible. I would say if you are decided, you don't need to wait for the MBA. But if you don't get in now, you have a new shot after the MBA. So maybe you should try twice. So you have two shots. Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure being here today. Thank you, Siddharth and team, and hope you have a good panel and rest of the event, and hope to meet you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, Flavio, for your. So sorry, everyone in the audience, because I got cut off and I was introducing the panelists. From the Bain cohort, we have Parth, Janvi, Sridhartha, and Yashwant who joined us. A warm welcome to you all as well. Next slide was into the world of consulting slide, where we had a very nice, insightful discussion about the world of consulting from Flavio. Now we move on to the next slide, panel discussion. Fazil, can we go to the question slide? Yes, all right. So we have curated a bunch of questions, bucketed it under common topics that were asked along in the Zoom registration link. So we've bucketed it out and we will ask individual panelists these questions and they will be taking it up. So the first of which is, what made you interested in consulting and how did you start? So starting off this question, Siddhartha, stage's yours.
Sure. So hi everyone, Siddhartha. So firstly, I like interacting with a lot of people, generating impact. So that is essential over my first year and second year summer, and I kind of realized that I did want to try out consulting at some point in time for these very reasons. And then, just like in most of your institutions, you realize that a lot of the learning comes from your peers rather than the professors, right? So that made me realize that I wanted to work with a bunch of really smart, well-motivated people. So again, consulting is one industry that gives you that. And again, the exit opportunity. So in case, let's say after 4 or 5 years, you realize that consulting is probably not what you want to do, then what happens? So the industry also kind of takes care of that by giving you some wonderful exit opportunities. So these three things in cohesion, along with the fact that in India, if you want to work on business related roles right after undergrad, management consulting is one of the best opportunities out there, and the others kind of do it, kind of wait away after that. So these all put together made me interested in consulting. And coming to how did I start? So the first thing was I interacted with a lot of my college seniors on how they started their journey, and I also started my networking with people who are junior consultants from my college, and yeah, that's pretty much how I started. Yeah.
Awesome. Anaga, do you want to expand or continue add on to this?
Yeah, so I'm in complete agreement with what Siddhartha said. So in your first and second year, I think most of us, we spend time exploring and understanding what it is exactly that we want to do in life. And I think towards your third year, you kind of get some sense of direction as to what you want to do with your career. So for me, three things were very important. One is the job description, what you do in your job. Secondly, it was the opportunities during your career at whatever firm you join and after your career at whatever firm you join. And lastly, it's the people. So coming to the job description, consulting in a sense is solving large problems that other companies give you. So I think that was something I found very interesting, the mathematics behind it, the networking behind it, all of that is something that excites me. So just to bring in an interesting thing that someone's told me, someone who worked at, I think, BCG. So they told me that no two days at BCG is the same. So it's a very exciting profession in that sense. Secondly, coming to the opportunities, during your time at any big firm, you get to network with a lot of the industry heads. So you might meet some CEOs, you might meet some CFOs and so on and so forth very early on in your career, and that's very good for you. So after you leave, there's a plethora of options from startups to strategy roles to big VCs and PEs, and this is something that's also very lucrative these days. Lastly, coming to the kind of people that you work with. So they're really bright, really ambitious people. And you are, say, the average of the 5 people who are closest to you. So it's very good to be surrounded by very ambitious, very bright people. How did I start preparing? So yeah, you have to speak to a lot of people from your college, people from the firms you're interested in, to understand what exactly consulting firms look for and what exactly you can do to make yourself good enough for these firms. So that's kind of how I started. Thank you.
Thank you, Anaga. Next, Siddhant, do you want to add on something to this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll take a different route to what Anaga and Siddhartha have said. Of course, all of which they've said is completely true, and I agree with it as well. I would like to point out to a different, perspective that I have regarding consulting. Of course, as Anaga also mentioned, that you get to work with very bright and ambitious people. For me, it was essentially, so consulting is wherein you are solving business problems. So I was definitely interested in business and strategy, and I wanted to work with bright people. So that's why I decided to have an attempt at consulting. That was the first thing. But I think on a more deeper level, I thought that I needed some more time to understand myself. For me, essentially, consulting is another chance to have a good, long, hard look at yourself. And of course, there's other reasons like exposure to various industries and stuff like that, which is important. But I don't know if people find out one industry that they like after consulting as well, right? So I think it's another shot to know yourself and how you operate. As also Siddhartha mentioned, that you're exposed to a lot of different leadership styles that are there. Consulting is special in this regard because at a very early stage, you're exposed to various leadership styles. I don't mean the leadership, external leaderships from the firm. I mean internal leadership. So you'll be split in teams, right? Case teams. You'll be working with different partners for very short durations, right? So it's essentially a way to discover yourself more and what kind of environment you thrive in and what kind of leadership suits you more. I think these are the softer aspects that very few people talk about, but I think that's my main motivation to go into consulting at this very moment.
That was an interesting perspective. All right, so now we will move on to the second question. Resume making is one of the most critical tasks prior to interviews, and more so for the consulting process than any other profession. So how does one make a standout resume? Let's see. Aditya, do you want to take this up?
Sure. So just want to confirm I'm audible, right? And
yes.
It's clear? Cool. All right, guys. So I'm just going to build on something that Flavio said. He said there are 3 skills that are required to become a consultant, right? The first of which is a logical thought process. But being engineers, almost all of you have logical thought process. So that should mean that all of you can be good consultants. However, what most of us fail to recognize is that there is a way of presenting information that a consultant needs to understand. There is understanding, so presenting information can only be understood if you know who's on the other end of the presentation, right? And that is the only way you make an impactful presentation. And that the same thing applies to your resume, right? So I have, a couple of very short pointers, and then I'll just quickly elaborate on all of them. So you have to be brief, you have to be impactful, you have to be diverse, you have to be coherent, and your resume has to have a pattern. All right. So we'll deconstruct this one by one, right? So we'll start with brevity. You have to be brief. If suppose I were to take about 40 minutes to describe these 5 points, I would lose all of you at the 10-minute mark, right? I'd probably lose half of you at the 10-minute mark, the other half at the 20-minute mark. So then what's the point? I'm wasting my own breath. Be brief. The pointers on your resume need to be brief. They need to clearly indicate what it is that you have done and what it is that you wish to convey, right? The action, the impact, that's all. Nobody needs to know all of the ancillary stuff, right? If you've got additional information in a point, just trim it down. Ensure every point ends in one line. Second is be impactful. What's the point of saying you made an algorithm if you can't say what that algorithm did, right? You're a consultant, you're not a tech guy, right? The consultant reading your resume is not going to understand what it is that you've written down unless you can actually quantify the impact. What if your algorithm was actually useless? What's the point? Again, you have to be impactful. Be diverse. Nobody wants to read a boring resume, right? If somebody picks up three points at random on your resume and they all read the same, they're going to drop your resume because they're going to be like, all right, I understand this guy has done this one pattern of things and he's just harping on it everywhere, right? We don't want that. We want the resume reader to think that you've done a lot of things, right? You've been diverse with your experiences. Now, obviously, all of you have been diverse, but the way you present it is far more important. However, you cannot take your diversity too far, right? you have to be coherent. If you pick up, say one bunch of lines on your resume, they have to be able to convey what it is that you actually want to achieve in life, right? You cannot have an absolutely technical project in some place, have, something completely non-tech in another place, and, have something completely, academic somewhere else. You have to tie them up with a string, with a bow together, and actually have some sort of a pattern. So say if somebody reads, one of your academic points, they should still see the impact. They should still see that you have an impact-driven mindset, right? And use a standard format. Please don't be fancy. That's one piece of advice that I got. Don't use a fancy format. Pick up something that your seniors used, somebody who are shortlisted. Use the same format, not the same points, but the same format. I think that's all I can do in my time. Sorry, I think I overshot it by a little bit. Go on, please.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, that is perfectly all right, Aditya. Pretty insightful. Janvi, do you want to add something onto this?
Sure. So I think I'll continue with what Aditya mentioned. So the way you build a resume is you focus on what have you done and what you want to show out of everything that you've done, and then how you actually end up presenting it. Because when you talk about consulting, the first step is getting shortlisted, and to get that, you need to differentiate yourself from other people. There's something called peaks or spikes that you can have in your resume. So essentially, your resume has 4 sections. You have your calls, your internships or projects, your extracurricular activities, and your positions of responsibilities. These are things that are expected out of you in your college life. So what consulting companies essentially look for are spikes or peaks, like for you to essentially do exceptionally well in 1 or 2 of these areas, and then have diversity in other places, as Aditya mentioned. Other than that, I think what you can actually follow here is something called the STAR approach, which is situation, task, action, and result. So every time you're looking at something, you want to convey something in your resume, make sure that it follows this format. And that way you'll be brief, you'll be able to get your point across, and you'll be able to create impact. So I think that's all that I want to add here. Thank you.
Thank you, Janvi. That was also, again, something that people have to be mindful of, having peaks or spikes on your resume. So what kind of internships or experiences should one do to build a shortlist-worthy profile? Risha, do you want to take this up?
Yeah, sure. So I think I'd like to probably build on what Janvi mentioned a little bit about the peaks as well. Right. So the first thing in terms of internships or experiences, at least how I was looking at it, was first do what you like, right? In terms of interest, figure out where your interests are. This is what your first, second year is for, and just how you are as an individual, both professionally as well as in terms of your extracurricular activities or, whatever you're interested in out of the class. And the second thing that I would focus on is how do I build the skills in this field of interest? This is not just for consult, but in general, at least that is how I wanted to evolve during college, right? So you work on that second. And third, finally, you have to find a way to excel in this. So where, sort of make this your standout space, which is your spikes. And from what I've understood is, I think that there are a lot of conventional ways to go about this. Our Insti is structured in a way that, there are a lot of conventional methods. For example, in terms of professional stuff, there is always day 1 interns. There are, these typical things that you can do, which automatically translate to spikes. However, I feel like there are also a lot of unconventional ways, as in just basically say in the research field, going after good research interns, right? Which also lead you to a spike, which I think is a little underrated at this point, but I feel like they really add a lot. So that's another way to go about it. And of course, in terms of experiences, I feel like when you look at PORs, they're a great way for people to really learn a lot. So of course, it translates to, you having certain skill sets that you can show on your resume. How do you stand out? One great way is leadership, right? So anything that you take up, if you are going to be the ultimate leader in the space, then it is automatically you standing out. So these things translate to spikes a lot easier, but I feel like there is no conventional way to go about it. So first find your interests and then accordingly decide how you want to stand out in the space by building skills. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Brisha. Arushi, do you want to add something onto this and maybe share something that you personally did?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Could you just confirm if I'm audible?
Yeah, perfectly
Yeah.
audible.
Okay, so just like a small disclaimer before we go ahead, it's just that none of us have ever really been on the other side of the hiring process so far. So whatever we say right now is primarily going to be based on our experience and whatever our seniors have told us. So just wanted to get that out of the way. Also, there is no solid list of XYZ experiences, internships that you can do, which will guarantee you a shortlist. But regardless, from my experience, I'll just walk you through what I think should work. So like Janvi already said, right? So your first part of your resume sums up to academics, where you can talk about your papers, your CG. Moving on, you have professional experience, which covers, which can be your corporate interns, which again could be a day one intern, could be a research intern, Indian or abroad. Then you have your PRs, your secretary positions, your sports, and so on. So the idea is that you want to show a complete all-rounder profile, and you want to show some form of excellence in either of these sections that you're going to be portraying in your resume. So I think everyone's pretty much covered the rest of the stuff, but personally, what I did was I just went with the flow. There was no real plan as such. In my first 2 years, I think I just went around exploring, joined a couple of PRs for fun. And then it turned out that grew into more and better things, and I enjoyed it, and I, rose up with it. So, and with respect to interns, I think I'd interned at JP Morgan, and that was also again completely out of interest at first. So like Grisha said, I would also, recommend everyone to follow your interest at first and then see if it aligns with the peak or not. And henceforth decide if you want to go ahead with consulting as your first choice. So again, take everything with a pinch of salt, because this varies from campus to campus and also from company to company, the number of peaks required and so on. So I think that was pretty much what I wanted to add.
Well, that is an interesting take on things. So we'll move on to the third question, your case interview process. So could you describe to us how exactly your case interview was, and then how did your interview progress on DDA? We'll save the first question for one panelist and the second part for another panelist. Ayush, you want to take this up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Siddharth. So just that there's there's a degree of uncertainty involved with getting shortlisted, and so a lot of folks tend to start their placement or the case interview process only after they get shortlisted. So just a quick advice there is that you can case interview prep is not just for consult profiles, but also for product management and other non-core profiles as well. So a quick advice there would be that you could start your case interview prep process well in advance. That is before shortlist as well. So I would quickly run through my process. The first was before the shortlist. I tried to keep all my ingredients ready in some way. So what I mean with that is forming your case group, sort of stacking upon the resources in terms of the case books, videos, and stuff like that. Getting your senior fund days in place and all of that. Secondly, I also prioritized more on solving guesstimates, because that was also very handy on other job profiles that I was looking forward to as well. And once I was done with that, I sort of took up upon the mainstream type of cases from different case books in sort of an order of difficulty. So this was all before the shortlist. Once the shortlist came out, I sort of made a point that I do at least 2 cases with the buddies that I get allotted with in respect to all of these firms, because I sort of got very pinpointed feedback from them, which I could then incorporate into the case interviews that I did with my case group, and that process helped me a lot. Apart from that, we also exchanged a lot of cases with the other shortlisted candidates in the cohort. This adds upon the quality as well as the quantity of cases during the time. And finally, a couple of weeks prior to the placement, I sort of completely stopped upon doing any new cases.
just revisited the older one, the ones that I had done before, and also adopted to the feedback that I was given, and somewhat also focused a bit on the personal interview prep for the final.
Thank you, Ayush. I believe you spoke about the buddy process and the case prep process. Parth, do you want to add on to this and explain what a buddy is? Why are they allotted to you? And then what kinds of things, what kinds of cases do you solve with a buddy? And finally, how did your interview progress on D-Day?
All right, sure. So I'll firstly cover the buddy process, right? I think up till the shortlisting point, it's clear to everyone. To give you a little context, I think a lot of people, when they're in this entire job semester period, they're focusing on multiple profiles. But for me, I had only applied to 5 companies, which are the MBBs, Carney, and LEK. So I had like a very narrow area to focus on. So I could just go completely hard on consulting. So what happens is after the shortlist, you are allotted your buddies. And although they say this entire buddy process is going to be non-evaluative and it's strictly for your growth, from what I've noticed so far, and actually it stands true to some level, is it's a way of firm to pre-evaluate how valuable you are going to be with them, right? So I think I'll break the buddy process also into 2 parts. Firstly is when you're chasing the firm, when you're trying to make an impression on the buddies, also kind of take their feedback and develop yourself. And the latter half, the last 1 to 2 weeks, what I've noticed is the firm is coming after you have performed well. So what I did in my buddy process was I was prioritizing BCG and Bain. McKinsey doesn't have like a buddy process, which is evaluative. So I just approached the buddies, not just the buddy I was allotted, but also I did a lot of cross buddy sessions with different seniors I knew in the firm. Also got references from different seniors to do cases with other seniors within the firm, right? So over a period of time, I think the firm had enough data points to pre-evaluate me and see how I was doing. And I think by the time the buddy process eventually ended, was about to end, I think these firms internally end up creating a hot list and they know what the candidates which they want to focus on more. And they kind of make the interview process a little bit easy for them. Although it's not true that if you don't perform well in the buddy process, your interview won't go well. I've seen a lot of people who were doing as well in their buddy process, but did well in their interview and got the offer. And I'd say that's like around 40 to 50% of the people, in fact. But if you're doing good in your buddy process, I think that gives you a little bit of a cakewalk in your final interview. And I think that's what happened with me as well. Towards the end of my buddy process, I kind of realized that the firms have started showing interest in me. There were a lot of calls I started getting from different people from across firms, trying to talk about their firm, what my preferences are going to be, etc. So I think by that point, I had like a bit of a clarity that I think the process is going to go smooth, and I was like less worried about the interview process then. Then I decided on my preferences personally, and then I gave my interview. So I think my interview story on the D-Day is not going to be very exciting. Actually, I had an 8 a.m. interview with Bain. And since the partner, and I think at some level, since I was performing good with Bain, the partner also knew I was. So it was pretty fast track. I got my offer by 8:30. By 8:40, I had signed off from all the different firms. And I was then finished with my day 1 pretty early. So yeah, I think that was the overall story.
Sorry again, muted. Yeah, interesting. Sriram, do you want to add anything interesting to this? Your final case interview process?
Yeah, sure. So just before I go to like how my day 1 went, some points to add. So there are a few types of cases, and I think most of us did those in a particular order, right? I personally started with guesstimates because, like Ayush said, I was preparing for PM as well, and their guesstimates are used a lot. Then I moved to profitability, which is one of the easier types of cases you solve. Then there's market entry, and then there's like different unconventional cases, right, which covers a lot. There might be more types within the unconventional cases. So this is the flow I went in. Other things about the case interview prep process have been covered by Ayush and Parth. So how did your interview progress on D-Day? For me also, like Parth, unlike him, I had 2 rounds. One was with a senior manager or a manager level, I don't remember. So that was my first interview. He did a profitability case, but it wasn't very intensive. He just wanted me to segment properly. And once I did that, he put me on to the next case, which was with a partner. That was a market entry case. And like what Ayush said, I had practiced, my buddy had given some tips which are very useful there about how the partner's time is valuable and how I need to arrive at some, say, mathematical formulations quickly. So that also went quite smooth. And by the end of that interview, I had the offer from the partner itself. So yeah, and one more thing. So unlike many, my process was a little different. That I didn't have a set case group. I used to participate, do cases with different people. I had like for a few days, I used to do continuously with one person. Then the next few weeks with some other person. There are pros and cons with this. The pros being you get a lot of diversity, and you get to do a lot of cases from different people. The cons is that since you have not scheduled with one group, you never know when the other person is busy. So that's a very big disadvantage. You might not find them free when you want to do a case. So yeah, that's how my case interview process went.
Thank you for that, Sriram. Now we will move on to the fourth question. I think Parth spoke about case groups. So case groups are essential to hone one's case solving skills. So if anybody could answer, how does one form case groups and what is crucial to a case group's success? Sankalpa, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure. So building off what Ayush and Sriram were talking about, there's no one way to form a case group or, one style to go about it, and people do different things. So I'm going to talk about what is traditionally and conventionally done, which is people usually have one set of two others, so a group of three that they prepare with. And this comes very early in the timeline because the case interview preparation is a process. And I like to think of it as learning a new skill. And when you learn a new skill, there's a period in which you really don't know what you're doing. And your case group fits in here first, where you all stumble around and you figure out what exactly is a case interview, how do you go about it, and how do you actually learn how to go about this process. So, the things I kept in mind while forming a case group are the following. So first, I wanted people who I was compatible with. So people who I could learn well with and know that overall we'd be able to support each other through the entire process. And second, we need to be able to give feedback to one another. So, because this process is quite intense and lengthy, but also, very hard because you're learning a new skill. And that means you're going to fail a lot repeatedly. And you need people to be able to give you feedback in a way that you can learn and pick yourself up and put yourself back together. And it's also constructive. And, while this starts with your case group and you form this, initial phase where you can learn off each other, this also goes, when you're better at giving cases and learning, you diversify, as Sriram was saying, and you do cases with pretty much everyone in your cohort who has shortlists. And finally, your case group functions as a safe space. I think the process is very intense and hectic. And sometimes you just need a group of people to go through the whole process with, who will support you, be there with you from the resume shortlist to the final day and, help you pick up the pieces as you go along.
Thank you, Sankalpa. That was pretty insightful. Yashwant, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. I think Sankalpa covered most of what's relevant towards forming a case group, but I'll just go over a couple of points which I kept in mind. So there are two aspects that I considered when you form a case group, right? One is almost like the tangible aspect, which is in a case group you want to have 2 to 4 people, but 3 is a very sweet spot in terms of how it works. You would have an interviewer, an interviewee, and an observer. So having 3 people is a very efficient number for how many people you want in a case group. And the second tangible aspect is you want to see how many, you want to be in a case group with people who will get an MVP shortlist, because that is the best scenario, because you will be going up till day one with people who are sort of on the same train with you. Coming to the intangible aspect, I think Sankalpa emphasized a lot on how important it is, because the case prep and the placement process itself is quite tedious, and it can be quite difficult for you to go through it alone. So you want to have people who you're very compatible with, who you're comfortable with, sort of taking feedback from, but also at the same time giving them feedback which is very honest. You shouldn't really be hurt personally by what they're saying, because at the end of the day, you want to grow together with the people in your case group, and you also want to trust them. I think because because of how intensive the process is, you need people who you can rely on. Like no matter whether it's 3 in the morning or it's 8 in the morning, if they should be a call away to sort of be there for you. And so I think trust is a very, very important aspect when you're looking for people you want to form case groups with. And I think one last thing which I feel is sort of like an add-on, which is not really necessary as such, is if you have case group with like let's say you have 3 people, right? If you could sort of have it with people who have a different set of seniors they have worked with, because how Insti works, or at least how IITM works, is depending on the teams that you are exposed to a different set of seniors. So let's say you're in Shastra, you have a different set of seniors you work with, and if you're in Sarang, you have a different set. For me, luckily, I had people from 2 different spheres, which I was not at all involved in. As a result of which, I got a lot of input from seniors who I didn't really get to interact through my Insti life, which worked out well in the end. So yeah, that's about it.
That was helpful advice, Yashwant. So we will go to the final question. What was your experience in scoring an interview off campus? So a lot of the panelists here have gotten offers on campus, as in directly during the placement time, all the companies come. So Divyam, do you want to add a little bit about how it works in IIT Kharagpur?
Yeah, sure. So just want to make sure I'm audible first. Am I?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So at IIT Kharagpur, I received my offer and the interview process happened in August itself. So I wouldn't, call myself as someone who went through the exact struggle of a completely, off-campus setting, because we have some kind of seniors over there. There's a lot of Kharagpur seniors in the MBB firms. So it's very easy to get a referral. But to get started about off-campus, the baseline is that you have to apply on the company's portal. That's number one. You cannot expect, an interview call without doing that. And a couple of things I want to get, off our way is that number one, if you apply to the company portal without a referral, there is, almost 0 to insignificant chance that you'll be getting an interview call. So that's number one. Number two, when you're applying to these portals, for at least for MBB, you'll find 2 different types of roles. One is the consulting role, which most of the panel or all of the panelists made up of. And there is also all of the MBB firms have an analyst role. So like Bain would have a Bain Capability Center analyst role, McKinsey would have a knowledge center, BCG would have a Gamma. So and the experience for these 2 roles is going to be very different. So make up your mind very well if you want to get into a consultant role or an analyst role. So so when these 2 things are off our way, we can talk about how to get a referral. Getting a referral is based on your network and how well you are connected to people who are working in the firm. So which is can get connected in 2 ways. One is like a personal route and like a cold route. On a personal route, I would say look around yourself, maybe in the companies that you have interned in, or maybe someone in your neighborhood, or maybe some consultant that your parents or companies is hiring or something like that. Try to get in touch with them. Try to have discussions around consulting, have discussions around your fit towards consulting, how the process is, and take good 2 to 3 months of time of regular contact with them so that you're able to get a referral. On the cold route, I think it is highly underestimated. My experience is that people working in these big companies are more friendly than you would imagine. So like the first point of contact would be seniors from your own college, if you can find them. And if even if MBBs don't, or consulting firms don't recruit from your college at an undergraduate level, it's possible that they might have got a lateral entry or through an MBA route or something like that. So try to get in touch with your alumni over LinkedIn. And if you want to make it completely cold, it's still okay. Even if they're not an alumni, you have absolutely no connection to them, you can still get connected with them, ask for some time, maybe for profile reviews, maybe for discussions around consulting. In this cold route, you probably want to start 6 to 8 months before you are planning to apply. And then when whether it's the personal route or the cold route, you have to inspire confidence in the person inside the firm that you are a good fit for their firm and for consulting. It's only then that they give you the referral. Once you get the referral, the process is very similar to what would happen in an on-campus setting. That's all.
It was interesting. So a lot of people who would have to go through this process at IIT Kharagpur, I believe, right? With referrals and going like that. All right. So we come to the end of the panel discussion. Fazil, can you go to the next slide? So these were the set of common questions that we saw across as a trend across the questions that came across in Zoom registration form. So let's stretch for 5 minutes, perhaps, so that all the panelists are also relaxed and then you guys are also not bored enough. And we will return in another 2 minutes, maybe, if you want to come earlier. For next, we'll have the live case demonstration. Take a break for a brief 2-3 minutes and then we'll reconvene. All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you're all back. You had some time to stretch and then get back on your seats. So we will be opening the breakout rooms now, and then each panelist will be taking you through a case demonstration. They will not solve the entire case for you like how they would to an interviewer. Instead, they will be on the other side of the panel and will solicit answers and a lot more hints from your side. And I hope you guys are a lot more interactive. Ask questions back to them, ask them why these assumptions are made, why you should proceed like that, and so that you can take away something from the entire session. Yeah, great. Fazil, go. Let's break out.
Yeah, sure.
So we will be opening 12 breakout rooms with one panelist in the main breakout room. Each of them will take you through a case. And then we will allot you randomly to a panelist. You will just randomly be inside them. And in case there are too many overlaps in the breakout rooms, if there are multiple panelists, we will just switch you so that each of you is in a separate panel. And in case all the people are allotted to breakout rooms, we will pull some people back to the main breakout room as well. What will the format of answering a case be? Madhav, they will tell you. That is the point of the case demonstration. They will tell you how to answer a case, how you should go about it. We're just waiting for Fazil to open the breakout rooms and we'll be good to go. Hang on a minute, folks, because you have to go to the Zoom's breakout room and assign this. This will take place for the next 20-25 minutes. Hopefully, we should be done by 25 minutes. They will take you through one case or one guesstimate, depending on what they are most comfortable with. Fazil?
Yeah, I'm arranging them. 1 second, okay? Give me 1 minute. I'll arrange it.
Yeah, you can just create 12 breakout rooms and it will assign automatically, yes.
Yes, I tried assigning automatically, but then it is difficult for us, move people here and there to identify people. That's why I'm doing it manually now.
No, the panelists we can identify them, right? So I will know the panelists, not her.
Okay. So just now I'll make one, assign automatically and I'll create 12 rooms.
Yeah. So in room 1, we'll have Arushi. Then I'm moving Siddhant to 12, means main room. So I don't want you in the room, but for now be in room 12 and then we'll put you out. I'm going to open all rooms. In case panelists are in the same room, please come back to the main room. I will tell you which is a free want to go to.
So that do I join room 12 or should I?
You can stay here.
I'm getting an invite for room 7. So should I join it now?
Yeah, please join. Please join all your assigned rooms for now. In case you see another panelist in your room, please come back to the main room and I will tell you which other thing is free and you can join that. Audience, please join your assigned rooms. It's fine.
Hey, I was in the same room as Sankalpa, so I left.
Which one was this?
6.
6, okay. Hang on. 7 has Parth. There is nobody in 8. Can you go to 8, Ananda?
Can you send both my Part's iPad account and myself both to room 7? Because that one is being allocated to a different one. Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. Anaga, I believe it's sorted. Okay. Aditya, I think you came back.
Could you? Yes, I was sent to room 3 on my laptop and room 4 on my phone. So which one am I supposed to join?
Okay. Hang on. 3 has Ayush, so preferably join 4.
Okay, cool. So can you send me to 4 on? Oh, can I join myself?
You can join directly. Yeah, you can directly join,
cool.
right?
Got it. I'll do that. Yeah. I'll move to room 4.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Parth, your iPad has not joined. It says, where is it? Should I search
it's in the main building right now. It's in the main building right now.
Oh, it's main
in the main room, sorry.
I think Parth is in room 7 and his iPad is in room 6, I guess. The allocation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
7
showing
room
not joined. Yeah, because I have.
Okay, both are in room 7.
Okay, yeah, both of them are in room 7. Perfect, Parth. Join room 7.
Perfect. It's still saying not joined though. I'm not getting the notification here. Never mind, I'll just. Cool. Perfect.
Were you able to join? Yeah, awesome. We have Siddhant here and everybody else is in their panel. Let me just check if everyone.
You can let me know when to start. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Room 12 has Janvi. I'm just checking if there's a panelist in each room. Room 11 has Yashwant. 10 has. 10 does not have anybody. 9 has.
10 has Divyam, no?
Plus 10. Oh, yeah, Divyam is there in 10. Okay,
Yeah.
please. 8 Thanaga is there. 7 Parth is there. Parth's iPad is there. Parth is there. Okay. 6 has Sankalpa. 5 has Sriram. 4 Aditya. 3 Ayush. 2 Siddhartha. 1 Arushi. Perfect. Siddhant, so sorry for taking up your time. Go ahead.
Not at all, not an issue. All right. I'll just share my.
Do you want us to? Yeah. Do you want us to stop sharing?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Let's do.
Awesome. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can see.
Right. Is it entirely visible, right?
Yes, the PPTX thing is visible.
Right. Cool. All right. So before I begin, I would want all of you to, like, if not switch on your videos, at least be interactive throughout the session, because I'm gonna ask you questions as to how we can proceed in the entire session, and it would really help me if you are a little more interactive. I know it's a little taxing, but if you can, that'll be really helpful to me also. All right. So let's begin. So the problem statement says that the client is a mint chewing gum manufacturer and it has been facing a decline in profits, and the client wants your help in understanding why, and they want to bounce back to higher profit levels, right? So when you look at this problem statement, it is fairly vague, right? And it's a very broad and wide question. Anything could be the problem, and we need to narrow down on that one particular problem that might be there, one or multiple, of course, and then like recommend solutions to the client, right? So since this is a very broad question, it makes sense to develop more understanding about the problem here. And before we also like start to structure out the entire case and narrow down on the problem, it makes sense to evolve your understanding about the problem a little bit more, right? So I would want you all to come up with questions which might be helpful in solving the case, or to get a more clear understanding of solving the case here. So anybody could unmute, and like if at all you could put on the chat as well, what do you think would be good preliminary questions? By preliminary questions, I mean clarifying questions that could help better your understanding about the problem. Anybody could unmute. I think there's Ashmit, Sahitya, Rhythm, Ayush, Naman. Anybody, if you could unmute and answer, that'll be really helpful. Siddharth, Saujanya, and I think Fazil, feel free to jump in as well. I mean.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So
Yeah.
since when is the
Fazil, go
firm?
ahead.
Okay, since when is the firm facing decline in profits?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, what that helps you is with trying to understand whether or not this is a very recent problem or whether this has been going on for a very long time. That is the first good thing that you can probably understand. What else?
Has our input cost increased during the past?
Right. While that question makes sense, Naman, is it? Yeah, right. So while that question makes sense, the point is that if the input cost has increased, let's say if I say yes, it has, let's say, for example, that is you are going to direct yourself to that problem only, right? And like ignore all the other problems that might be there. So that might not be a very structured way to approach this problem. Perhaps breaking this problem down into smaller parts and then analyzing them one by one is a better way to go about it. So I think we have examples from both the types of questions that might be there. So like for example, the question that Naman asked, it's more on the right hand side. You see, have we changed the prices of our product, or has the revenue declined, or has the cost increased, and like what is the quantum of decline? So these are all questions that will help you gather data, but that like gather data before defining a structure, and that might make your entire structuring a little bit messy, right? So a better way, perhaps, or better questions would be those questions which would help you understand the problem a little bit better, right? Just understand the problem a little bit better and not ask for data directly, right? So since when has the client been facing a problem, as Fatal asked, right? The client has been facing that problem for almost 2 years now. Similarly, where is the client based out of here? You're just getting an understanding about the client and trying to be in their shoes and look at the problem, right? And is the problem specific to a particular geography? So no, the client is based out of India and the problems have suffered across India, right? Other chewing gum manufacturers facing the same issue. This will help you, gain an understanding about the market, right? Whether or not you are the only, or your client is the only one who's facing such a problem, or are there others in the market as well, right? So none of the others are facing such an issue, right? So this makes us think that perhaps this is not caused by, let's say, a macroeconomic situation, but it's sort of problematic, or like it's only specific to our client, right? And like, what kind of products does the client have? This is just to get a better understanding. Let's say if the client had multiple products, there could be problems with one of the products and not the others, right? So it makes sense to get an understanding of that also. So in this case, just to keep things simple, I've just taken one product. That's mint flavored finger. I think there's a typo over here. Right, one product it should be. Anyway, so let's now move on to the structuring. Any takers as to how we should go about structuring a profit case? Think very basic. Think from first principle. What exactly is the definition of profit, right? Any takers here?
We'll look into the revenues and expenses.
Perfect. That makes sense, right? So profits includes revenue, and it's essentially the difference between revenue and cost. That makes sense. Now, what would be the best way essentially to break down revenue and cost, right? Let's start off with revenue. What do you think revenue is, right? In terms of like from first principle. Like if you were to break down revenue into an algebraic expression, so to say, how would you say, if there's only one product, right? If there's only one product that you're selling and you have to imagine yourself as the client here. If you are selling only one product and you have to define the revenue of that, of your company, what would that be, right?
The total sales.
Sorry, come again.
The total sales.
That makes sense, right? So sales is essentially, what do you say, the number of units sold, right? Is that what you mean by sales?
Sorry?
Sales. So by sales, do you mean the number of units sold? Is that?
No, the monetary value of sales.
Right. So it'll be essentially the number of units sold multiplied by the price per unit, right? That way you can get the overall monetary value of the number of units sold, right? Similarly, how do you think we can break down cost here?
The amount with which we are putting in, like manufacturing the gum, or on the marketing or advertising and the transportation, logistics, everything.
Right. Absolutely. That makes sense. That is absolutely true. But I am not, invalidating what you've said, but let's take a step back and try to understand, try to create an analogy from the revenue breakdown that we have. So we can perhaps look at cost as a cost per unit multiplied by the number of units, right? Number of units produced. Now, cost per unit would include all of which you've mentioned. It would include the fixed costs and the variable costs. It will include marketing or R&D and stuff like that. So what you said is absolutely correct, but you can go step by step and try and understand how we should exactly break down a problem, right? So let's say if you were given this problem and you've come up with this initial structure, right, of both revenue and costs, and then you ask the client yourself, which one of the revenue or cost should be broken down further, or which do you want me to analyze first, right? So let's say, for example, if you want to analyze the revenues first, right? Because I think that's where the problem lies. I am the client, I'm saying that's where the problem lies, right? So we have created this this structure as price per unit multiplied by the number of units. That is the revenue that is there, right? Now, we want to break down. So I asked the client, which of these have decreased, right? So let's say, for example, if I say the number of units have declined, whereas the price that we charge for one unit, that is one chewing gum, has remained the same, right? So that means if the revenue has declined, the number of units have declined, right? So how do you divide the number of units, right? So there are various channels through which you can sell this particular unit, right? There can be supermarkets and retail chains. There can be kirana stores or pawn shops, and there can be online channels like Swiggy, Instamart, or something like that, right? Is there any other channel that comes to your mind? Like anything else that you can perhaps buy a chewing gum from?
Vending machines, maybe.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct, right? So vending machines might be one more. I think perhaps add another one here, saying that this is sort of saying that this is vending machines, right? That is absolutely correct. So I say now the next thing is that you have now 4 channels, right? You have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you want to analyze which of these is facing a problem, right? So let's say if I tell you the number of units from the kirana and pawn shops have declined, right? So if you, yeah, right. So how do you break down the number of units sold from the kirana or pawn shops, right? So it could very well happen that the number of shops have essentially declined across India, but the number of units per shop have essentially remained the same. Maybe there's something that has caused the kirana stores or the pawn shops to close down. Maybe the, a Swiggy, Instamart, something like that, or online, e-commerce channels coming through, that might have caused the kirana stores to shut down. That might be an issue, right? So we break this down into the number of shops multiplied by the number of units per shop that are being sold, right? And I tell you that perhaps the number of units per shop is the problem, right? How do I clear off this annotation? Yeah. All right. Awesome. So now we need to break down the number of units per shop that have been sold. So that has essentially declined, right? So now we need to understand, if I am the customer, right? If I'm going to a shop, and I'm not buying that chewing gum anymore, right? I'm one of the people who's gone to the shop and not bought a chewing gum. What might be an issue, right? So do you have any suggestions as to, or what are your thoughts about what essentially is the issue regarding the number of, like, if I'm going to a shop and I'm not buying that chewing gum, what might be a possible issue?
Maybe there's a new brand, like there's a new gum.
Absolutely, that
which
might be
costs the same but tastes better.
Perfect. So taste might be one of the issues, that perhaps competitively marked, our taste might not be as good as the competitors. That makes sense, absolutely. So that is one. What else can you think of? Anything else that comes to your mind apart from taste?
We can't identify the item among other items. I mean, maybe it's not perfectly, maybe the item is not perfectly, presented. We can't identify it from other items.
I am so sorry. Could you come again? Your voice is a bit muffled.
Hello? Yeah, is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can't identify the item among other items. It's not properly presented.
Maybe, right? So perhaps visibility might be an issue, or accessibility might be an issue. So essentially we'll divide the entire, for me as a customer, divide the entire journey of buying this particular product into sort of a customer experience journey. Okay, so let's analyze that. So let's divide it into 2 parts. First is pre-buying the chewing gum, and the second is post-buying the chewing gum, right? So pre-buying the chewing gum would include need, whether or not there's a need for that particular chewing gum anymore, right? If there is awareness about that chewing gum, whether or not that chewing gum is accessible. Perhaps the kirana shops are not maintaining that inventory, or perhaps they've placed it at the backside of their shops that they're not visible, right? That might be an issue. And let's say if the price is not competitively marked as compared to, it's not competitively marked, right? So affordability might be an issue. Now, once you buy the chewing gum, what all things do you analyze, right? So the first is taste, of course, as Naman mentioned. There's of course chewability. That might be one. Some chewing gums are hard to chew as well, and some of them are fairly easily they easily come off, right? Then there might be flavor lasting time. As I mentioned, this is a mint chewing gum. Perhaps people are eating that to get a tinge of fresh breath, right? So that might be an issue, right? So flavor lasting time is another thing that you might want to analyze. And the last is of course disposal, right? How do you dispose of that chewing gum? Perhaps people who have turned eco-friendly or like who are very aware about that eco-friendly, perhaps your customer base is exactly like that, right? And they are very concerned about the disposal. So these are the things that you want to analyze. So let's say if I am the client and I say that let's explore the need and awareness part, right? So this is a particular survey that I conducted as a client, right? And the survey essentially makes us understand the breakdown of our customer base, right? So 86% of the customers are essentially cigarette smokers, right? Using the chewing gum as aftermints. And what has happened here is there's an overall decline in the cigarette smoking population, and that has essentially decreased the need of buying our chewing gum. So that is one, right? That is the first problem that we're looking at. The second problem is essentially awareness. So our product is majorly marketed as cigarette aftermints, which is why the majority of our customer base is essentially cigarette smokers. So there are two problems now that we have narrowed down on. The first is need, which says that there is an overall decline in the cigarette smoking population in the country. So that has led to an overall decline in our cigarettes, in the demand of our chewing gum. And then there is a lack of awareness of using the chewing gum as something else also, right? It might be so that this is essentially used only as an aftermint like for cigarette smokers and not in general people who like to eat chewing gums, right? So now that we've identified the two problems which are essentially there, what do you think could be possible solutions to this to these two problems, right? What do you think can be the solution? Naman, Sahitya, anybody, I mean Saujanya, Siddharth, Fazil, anybody can answer. What do you think could be possible solutions?
Hey, folks, I see we have only 6 participants. We had one person away. Naman, go ahead. Do you want to give it a try?
Maybe we could focus on a new target, like the kids segment, or we
Right.
can
Absolutely. So,
new market segmentation.
Absolutely. So we could perhaps either go target a new customer segment. Perhaps we could brand our product in a way that could appeal to children or minors as well, right? And not just the cigarette smoking population. That might be one possible solution. Excellent. What else could be a solution, right? Sahitya, do you want to give it a try?
Yeah, go ahead, Sahitya.
I am thinking about introducing like many new flavors which are not currently in the store line.
Absolutely, that makes sense. Introducing a new product line altogether might just take the load off of this product for our revenue calculations, right? So that is one definite possible solution. Any other solution that comes to mind? Because the two solutions that you have mentioned are actually one of the two of the 4 solutions that I thought of as well. So the first, as Naman mentioned, is it could be relaunched with a different branding to target a wider customer base, right? The second is, of course, as Sahitya mentioned, different flavors and new line of product would be introduced to replace the current main product. Of course, that is the second. Then third is we could perhaps team up with cigarette manufacturers, try and capture the remaining market share that might be there, try and expand our reach in that. Even if it's a declining market, we can try and capture 100% of that market and increase our revenues and thus increase our profits. That might be another possible solution. And the fourth, of course, is you could go to an entirely new market, right? You could go outside of India and perhaps a European country wherein the smoking population is increasing and it's sufficiently large as well for you to target, right? So these are 4 solutions that I thought of. Is there anything else that you can think of? Well, you're welcome to speak. So perhaps what we can do, a good way to analyze the what do you say, feasibility, is to understand, like, so always, when you're looking at solutions, you should divide them into 4 parts, right? So this is essentially the time taken to execute, right? And this is essentially the feasibility that you have, right? So there are 4 sections, right? One of them is takes low time to execute and low feasibility, low time to execute and high feasibility, high time and high feasibility as well, and low feasibility but takes a very long time also, right? So these are the 4 sections. Perhaps you want to try and put these solutions into these 4 categories. So what that helps is the synthesis that you are giving to the client or you are presenting to the client, it's more clear. It helps the client understand that better also. A particular solution, if it's more feasible but takes a lot of time, you might want to warn the client about that also, right? So you can take a shot. Naman, Sahit, I think those are the only 2 people here apart from 180 DC. You can take a shot here and try and categorize these 4 into in these 4 buckets that might be there. Naman, Sahid, do you want to take a shot? Even, of course, Saujanya, Siddharth, and Fadil can take a shot. I mean, I don't mind. I think you're on mute, Siddharth.
Fazil, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to redirect it to him as well.
Actually, I got lost in between, so I couldn't catch that 4 points.
Sorry, I could not make out what you're saying. Could you come again?
He got lost in between, he said.
Oh,
yeah,
so
I think he didn't follow the
so
high time, high impact thing.
Okay, I'm so sorry if I've contributed to you zoning out in the middle of the session, but nevertheless, let's try and categorize these one by one, right? So if you're trying to do, if you're creating a different branding to target a wider customer base, this is something that will take a lot of time. Of course, it's highly feasible, right? You could start a new marketing campaign, and then you could it would not take a lot of capital for you to do it, but the cultivation of new customers, that will take a lot of time, right? So perhaps this is something that might be highly feasible, but it takes a lot of time, right? So let's number these. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. This will go in the first quadrant that is there, right? Then you look at the second solution is different flavors and new line of product, right? They could be introduced to replace the current main product. So again, this is again something that will require more capital, right? You'll have to develop a new taste. You'll have to develop, you'll have to develop those that marketing and the advertising around the new products as well. So again, this is something that I would say is a little less feasible, and it will take a lot of time as well, right? This is according to me. So I think this should go in the fourth quadrant. If you look at
a lot more R&D and a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to design a new packaging, and then you'll have to design a new marketing campaign for everything, and perhaps new machinery as well. So that will take a lot of capital. Then you have teaming up with cigarette manufacturers, right, to capture the remaining market share. I feel like this is a highly feasible solution, and I don't think it should take a lot of time as well, right? You send out to these cigarette manufacturers that perhaps you can take a share of our profits, and then you can perhaps sell that our chewing gum with your product itself, so that they can get the aftermarket that if they buy some other product, they can buy our product itself. So perhaps this might be highly feasible and less time taken to execute. Perhaps it will be in the second quadrant. The last one is enter the new markets, right? Or like enter a new market altogether. I think this is a highly unfeasible. I'm not saying that this cannot be done, but the feasibility of this operation is low, right? You entering a new market altogether will take a lot of time. It will take a lot of capital as well. And it's a new market, right? There might be competitors already there, present, established. So you'll have to make a name for yourself over there also. This is a less feasible, and it takes a lot of time as well. So perhaps again, this might be in the fourth quadrant here. So once you present these solutions in a manner like this, it makes it more clear. It tells the client that you've thought about the solutions, right? And not just saying that off the top of your mind. You've actually put thought into when you're telling those solutions. So essentially, it's important for you to check the feasibility of your recommendations, and based on who the client is, essentially, right? So you need to understand, like, if let's say this chewing gum manufacturer was pretty small, right, in size, right? So you might not want to recommend this, the last one, entering a new market altogether, as a possible solution, because they don't have the capital required to enter that market, right? So it's important to check your feasibility as well. Awesome. Okay. So what should your takeaway be from this session is, of course, always use a MECE structure. That's number one. So what's MECE is essentially, it's mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, right? So when you look at all the structuring that we have done here, like let's say, for example, if you look at the most basic structuring, so revenue is price per unit multiplied with the number of units, right? So if you're looking at this structuring, it's mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive. So algebraic expressions, try to come up with algebraic expressions as much as possible, right? And algebraic expressions, they help you remain MECE throughout. Similarly, when you look at this customer journey, you need to understand that you need to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and try to take yourself throughout the journey, and then try and understand when you take that journey method, it's hard for you to miss any step because you're in the shoes of that customer itself, right? It's highly likely that you've been a customer for a chewing gum as well. So it's important to remain MECE throughout, because perhaps if you miss one or two things, perhaps that is where the problem might lie, right? If you don't question the need altogether, you might have missed out on a big problem point that might have been there for clients. So it's very important to remain MECE. The second is, of course, have a logical and detailed structure that will help you reach the root cause of the problem. The third is prioritize using the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule is essentially saying that perhaps if, let's say, there are different interpretations to this rule as well. So one that I follow is that perhaps if there is some problem that is contributing to 80% of the overall problem, right? Let's say, for example, the profit decline, 86% was contributed by cigarette smokers, right? So you focus on that itself and let the remaining 14% in this case, let it be, right? So the 80-20 rule just gives you a ballpark figure to follow. If something is contributing 80% to the overall problem, you should focus on that and leave the remaining 20 out of it, right? Then, of course, showing good communication is absolutely essential. You should articulate and present your thoughts well. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to ask.
Done. I think you were on the final slide of this, no?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the screen didn't move, or was it only for me? I'm not sure.
No, it didn't switch to this side.
Yeah, actually, we were all on the first slide when you spoke about MECE structures and logical communication and things like that.
Is that so? You did not see the slide?
No, because I vaguely remember this slide being there.
So is this the only slide that you did not see? You've seen all
No,
the other
none
slides.
of the other slides we saw. We saw only the first slide, right? Saujanya, were you able to see?
Yes, it was first slide.
It was just the first slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So only the first slide was visible throughout. So that's why I was wondering.
Is that so?
Yes.
I presumed it was a me issue.
I mean, you could have spoken out, nevertheless.
Yeah, actually, I texted you in between saying that issue. I mean, in the chat itself, a direct message.
Oh, is that
That's
so?
all
I
right.
mean, I did not check this.
You can just run them quickly in a minute or so, because
Yeah,
that is when
I'll do
we'll
that,
close
absolutely. 1 second. Let me reshare my screen, perhaps that'll.
No, we were seeing it when you switched over next.
Yeah.
Like just before
I
you
got
close.
it. 1 second. Right. Now are you able to see the change?
Yes.
So you did not see any of this?
No. I think we texted you in between as well, but yeah.
That's so. I'm so
Our
sorry.
my screen froze.
I see we have one panelist who's done on time. Brilliant. Yes.
Right.
Awesome stuff.
So of course, as you can see, I've broken down the revenue into price per unit and number of units, cost and cost per unit and the number of units. So if you look at, then we've broken down revenue further into those streams that are there from which you're generating revenue. And again, dividing one particular stream into the most logical split that might be there, right? And of course, then we analyze the customer journey that is there. And we pointed out that perhaps need and awareness are the two issues that we need to focus on, right? Similarly, when we then looked at the 80-20 rule, and we looked at we essentially focus more on the need and awareness and try to identify what the exact problem is. And then we found out the solutions that are there, the 4 solutions that we found out, and the split that we did. The first one being rebranding, the second being introducing new products, third being teaming up with cigarette manufacturer, and the fourth being going into a new market altogether, right? So essentially, again, to summarize the main takeaways from this session is, of course, first be messy all together, right? Have a logical and detailed structure. You should prioritize using the 80-20 rule, and of course, be articulate and have good communication throughout. That helps the other people stay in loop. Perhaps being on slide 1 does not really fit in well here with good communication, but nevertheless, when you're solving a case, I hope you don't make such mistakes. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Also, I have one bonus resource that perhaps people don't use. I can share it with you right now. One second.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but Siddharth, maybe could you send across the resources to everyone? Because even in my breakout room, people were asking for resources.
Absolutely.
So it's a cumulative thing.
I think I can share it with 180 DC directly, and perhaps they can float it around if they want. Whatever resources I have, I'll share it.
Yeah, I think that works better, right? You just send it across to 180 DC and they can share it with everyone.
Yeah. I think Siddharth, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So yes, Sahitya, you will get the recording. It will be on YouTube in a few days, and the entire session of Siddharth will be on YouTube. Don't worry. Yes. So did we all complete our case, panelists? Because I received a lot of questions to extend.
Unfortunately, no. I did not realize the breakout room was going to end. So I was just
I couldn't complete the case. I rushed through the last few moments, but yeah, it was
I could manage it, the rush through the end.
Yeah, I was pretty close. I lost connection in the middle, so.
Okay, because otherwise these questions.
Mine, but there was a question that was pending at the end. If I can just answer that now, because I think I got cut off halfway through.
Yeah, sure. Aditya, be answering while Fazil, can you share the Mentimeter link so that people can start putting out questions there?
Cool. So for the benefit of all the candidates, okay, sorry, Fazil.
Fazil, yeah. Everybody mute yourselves. Aditya, go ahead.
Cool. Right. So for the benefit of all the candidates, the question was, how do you end a case? Right. Once you've identified a particular problem, how do you end a case? And the idea is you just ask. Right. Once you've identified a problem, you frame a hypothesis around that problem. And ideally, you should have had a hypothesis before identifying a problem. Right. That's how you know that your hypothesis is correct. So the idea is, once your hypothesis has been fulfilled, you tell the panelist, all right, look, my hypothesis was this. Basis the information that you've given me, my hypothesis stands true, and in my opinion, this is the issue. Would you like me to look at something else, or would you like me to, conclude the case? The panelist is going to tell you whether they want you to look at other stuff or they want you to conclude the case. If they want you to conclude the case, you synthesize, right? I think we covered the synthesis. So, I think all of you all covered the synthesis. Guys, I was talking to the panelists. I think all of you all covered the synthesis.
Nope, I didn't cover the synthesis now.
I didn't.
Okay. Divya, would you want to cover it? I covered it with my panel, so if you want to cover it for everybody else.
Yep. So for the benefit of everyone, synthesis essentially means sort of like a quick summary of what all has happened. So for the groups which did do the lemon stall case, there the synthesis was that you figured out that the revenues has dropped because of a supply problem with the lemons, and that was because the lemons were going bad as the heat in the months of May and June had increased. And then some people prefer giving recommendations along with the synthesis. Some people do summary and recommendations separately. So that's more of up to you and what you're comfortable with.
Can I continue a question which I was answering and I got
Yeah,
dropped off?
sure. You guys can take the time to answer your audience's questions.
Yeah, so for the benefit of all, right? So the question that I got was, what happens when you're given a case that you have no clue about the industry? So basically, I guess some panels did a guesstimate and some panels did a business case. So basically, a business case is an extension of a guesstimate. You use similar structures, but you use business structures and you essentially work towards something. So it could be about multiple industries. So over time, you practice quite a bit of the cases. So let's say you practice 20, 30 cases. So you will know about some industry. So maybe right now you think you might not know anything, but over time, as you practice, you will know. That is one. Second thing is, even if you don't know, it's absolutely fine. You can ask your interviewer, hey, you say that I'd like to know a bit about this industry because I'm not aware of it myself or something along those lines. They'd be more than happy to guide you because their intention there is to test your problem solving skills, given that you know some basic details to proceed with problem solving, right? With that particular case, their only intention is to test your skills of problem solving and not your knowledge of the industry. At least at an undergrad level, that is the case. Maybe in B schools, it might change, but at an undergrad level, that is what they're looking for. So if you don't know something, if you don't understand a term, let's say they use a term like value chain and you're not sure what a value chain is, feel free to ask. They will explain. Yeah.
One more thing that I want to add, like guys, if you have if you say missed some part of your case or your panel could not finish it, you can have a look at our YouTube channel, right? It's one of the cases will be there, so that will help you.
Unable to put my questions on the mention link. Saujanya?
We have received a bunch of questions already,
We
so
did.
probably you can try again.
Oh, actually, I too am not able to jot down my questions over there.
There is some error probably because it shows it's coming back again and again to the first question. So I guess there is some error.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Until then, you can just fire the questions in the chat, right?
Yeah, shoot. Right now, you can shoot a question and the others, preferably Mentimeter. No? You had a question, right? I think, Madhav?
Yeah, I've already dropped it in the chat.
What is more important for case solving, using a framework or simply giving a feasible solution? Brisha, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure, because I got something similar in the breakout room as well. Wait, I'm not sure if we're supposed to be answering the questions though.
No, you guys only. I would have redirected it to each of you.
Okay, sure. So the reason I took up the question is because there are two parts to case solving, at least how I see it, especially when you're doing a problem type one, which is essentially the client is facing a problem X and they would like your help to identify the problem and then solve the problem as well. So that's exactly the two parts. The first is identify the problem, which is where frameworks really help, right? So there are, of course, set frameworks that you would a lot of resources would sort of guide you towards, but there are also a lot of ways to think about it in general that you would identify, right? So that's the way you arrive at the problem. Once you've arrived at the problem, then you communicate it to your interviewer and then they'll be like, okay, now let's move on to finding the solution. So again, here you can use different, not frameworks exactly, but you can structure your solutions, right? Instead of just giving 3-4 random ideas, it is always better to say for this particular problem, this would be the right solution because of XYZ. So that is possibly the way to do it. It's not like you can do one part, you have to do both.
Parth, do you want to go ahead? Add something?
Right. Just a quick caveat about using frameworks, right? So what I noticed during my prep was that a lot of folks were using standard frameworks and often people try to force fit a framework. Like people try to create frameworks for different industries, for different types of questions. I really don't think the senior people in the firms appreciate that. They like to have their conversations as natural as they can be. So what I'll suggest you is that you start off with a lot of frameworks, you try to learn them as much as you can, but as and when you become better and more proficient, you try shifting to a framework which you particularly curate for the case. And I think it becomes extremely feasible once you've done 100 plus cases. And I think that is what they appreciate, having a more natural conversation, which does have a sense of framework in it, but it's not something which, let's say, they've seen, ki, acha, okay, market entry hai, to usko ekdam standard tarike se you're breaking it, and then something which is not really relevant to the case, you're breaking it in the same way. Like using, let's say, terms like average transaction value, like number of transactions into average transaction value would be better than, let's say, number of customers into purchase per customer or something like that. Like you can just curate things according to what exactly the case is, and just try to strive for getting there instead of just trying to be proficient and memorizing all the frameworks in your head.
All right. So we had 2 panelists per question. So ideally, we'll keep 2 panelists per question because there are quite a few questions that are being shot at. So Mithika Singla says she was juggling to find summer internship at a good firm. What are some ways to find a good internship off campus? Off campus, Divyam, closest I can help.
Okay, so I think the answer is very similar to what you would do for a consulting thing as well. Look around for, so personal and cold at a personal level, look around, maybe ask for references from anywhere you have interned in the past. You can look for people who may have switched. You can ask your friends who have interned in other companies if they can refer through their seniors, refer you somewhere. On LinkedIn, try to use it to your best extent. You also have some like Google extensions like Lucia and Adapt and ski.io and things like that, which you can use to get email IDs of people, and you can try shooting out emails at them, but make sure that the emails are very personally curated and very personal to the company and to the person, and that everything that's written in there is extremely relevant. You can do that. Other than that, I think LinkedIn is the best resource. A lot of people keep posting internship opportunities out there, so keep an eye. Have a lot of connections, ideally in the north of 5,000 connections. If you can have it, would be very good. And yeah, there's a lot of people who keep sharing internship sheets, links to portals where internships are active, and there I think there are also some newsletters where they publish internships, so you can have a look at all of those as well. So, and the most important bit is, for an off-campus internship, don't give up. It's not a function of, not strictly a function of what it's more, I think it's more a function of how much tenacity you have to go on writing emails, keep on reaching out to people, and eventually you have to reach the right person at the right time.
Right. So I have an interesting question that popped up on Mentimeter. It asks, how do I know which is the right firm for me between McKinsey, BCG, and Bain? So I would like one person from each firm to answer which is the right fit for me. That was the question that an audience person asked. So preferably people who've not spoken. Go ahead, Danaga.
Yeah, hi. So that's a very interesting question. So I'd like to say that sometimes you don't choose the firm chooses you. So it's a very circumstantial thing. But I would say for most people, what happens is that during the interview process, you interact with a lot of people in the firm, from partners to associates, and you understand what the work-life balance is like, what the kind of work they do is, and what the integral values of the firm are. Just a disclaimer, it's very, very, very similar across MBB. So there's very little to differentiate the firms in that sense. But I would also like to add that, you need to go to a place where your values are prioritized. If you would prefer a more A better work-life balance, there are some firms that cater to that. If you would want to make more money at the start, there's some firms that cater to that. If you want the prestige, there's some firms that cater to that. Not taking any names, you'll figure out which is which, but you just have to understand the firms, and that will happen very naturally through the interview process if you speak to enough people.
Hey, Arshi, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, so maybe if someone from Bain or McKinsey wants to go ahead, since you wanted one person from every firm, I think we can do that as well.
Okay, then we have a BCG person who's answered. For McKinsey, Sankalpa, Ayush, Risha. Risha's already spoken, so we'll give it to Sankalpa or
Sure.
Ayush.
I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think, when you start, if you are fortunate enough to have multiple shortlists and you get to the interview process where you're interviewing and interacting with all the firms, you start thinking and you try to be structured about it. You think about all the different firms, their values, as Anaga was saying, pros and cons, your expenses, how much you get paid, the people you interact with, the experiences you think you'll have. But once you've made all these structures and you have all of this information that you've gathered, I think the final decision comes, a bit randomly. It's like instinctively in that moment, towards the end, in day one, you just instinctively feel that, maybe a firm is a better fit for you. And you don't have a very good answer as to why. Obviously, it's a function of all the information you've gathered, the people you've interacted with, and what you know. But you take that spot decision there and then you make peace with it. I think that's how it's worked for me, at least.
All right. We heard from the BCG and McKinsey people. One from Bain, and we will conclude this question. Parth, go ahead.
Sure. I think these guys have mostly covered everything. I think a few things I also looked for was the key offerings of all the firms. I think first of all, if you get into any of these firms, it's absolutely great. I think you shouldn't think too much into it, but at the same time, every firm has a very unique value proposition. It could be the brand value, it could be government projects, it could be the work-life balance, the private equity group. I think all of us know here which firms you're talking about, but I think that is something which you'll discover. And I think one more thing is the interactions you have throughout your buddy process, because that gives you a very good glimpse of where you are the best fit. And I think that is what I ended up prioritizing the most. As in when I realized the people I'm talking to within all the firms, who do I see myself working with the most? And I think that is what took precedence for me.
I see quite a few questions on first years. So most companies in India at least don't hire first year undergrads. There are 3 more years for your undergrad if it's a BTech or BE, and 2 more if it's BSc. So nobody is going to come for first years ideally to hire directly. Internships would be a better way to build your profile before heading on to placements. Okay, Saujanya, do you have any final question to ask the panelists? Something that was maybe upvoted a lot?
Yeah, so this seems to be the most upvoted question, which is, should we have a resume customized for different firms? Would someone like to take this up?
Yeah, so let me go for it. My point of view is that you actually submit a couple of things to the firms. That's a resume and a cover letter. For me, until and unless, you are a very specific type of profile or very, very different from the others, I don't think there's a very strong motivation to have a very customized resume. Small changes here and there, of course, you can do if if you think that some firm, after interacting with the alumni, you realize that some firm is probably looking for something or something like that, very circumstantial. But yes, of course, you can have a different cover letter for every firm, because your cover letter should ideally, be in line with some of the firm's values and what they're expecting out of you, what kind of person the firm wants. So yeah, cover letter, surely you can probably 1 or 2 paragraphs you can customize. CV, not so much.
All right, so I guess we will move on to the summary part of the bootcamp. I guess we are done with the live questions because the majority of it we've covered in the first 6 bucketed questions, and now it's a lot about resume, how to individualize and put their resumes and to get the kinds of internships they want. Yes, and this is where we stop our panel discussion and we move on to the summary part. Okay, one last question and we'll conclude by Siddharth. It's a question for all panelists. Is a journey into consulting in India different for overseas students coming in due to lack of direct engagement with the firms? Yeah, before anybody would like to take it up, have a look at the answers that Visha and Arushi have given. So might be the most useful out there. Finally, before thinking too much, a coin flip or something that maximizes your chances. So, simplest answers. Okay, the final question. Does anybody want to take this up? Is it different for overseas people coming in? So
yeah, I think we'll all be speculating here. I don't think anybody here has experience regarding overseas students.
Yeah, so, majority of us are all Indians, and all the firms also we went in through the standard Indian hiring process. So we are not very sure of how overseas students coming in would have a change in their recruitment cycle. All right.
I guess if you're an undergraduate in one of Indian colleges, I don't think that the process will be, very different from otherwise. If you're overseas and directly applying for a role in India, then obviously the process will be very different. The pace is going to be very different. The buddy process is going to be very different. And like in terms of what the difference is, I think the process will be slower, and it's not going to be as in an on-campus process. You get your offers in maximum of 3-4 hours. It might take a couple of months over there, and yeah, that's it. And yeah, of course, they would obviously, an Indian role would prioritize people who are permanently going to stay in India most probably. So yeah, that heads up you have to have.
Yeah, what Divyam is basically trying to say, the one thing that he tried not to say was that the probability of you actually cracking an Indian offer is far lower for an entry role, simply because they've got better options that are less complicated, or equally good options that are less complicated. That's it. So it's better to apply to a regional office and then transfer.
All right, so we have our panelists who've spoken. All right, so we come to the conclusion ceremony of the entire bootcamp. Thank you all for being here. I'm sure the panelists also had an interesting time solving the cases and answering questions. Fazil, can we move on to the next slide? We conclude with key takeaways from this whole camp. Management consulting is a high impact, high growth profession. We realized Flavio giving a long slide about how your career progresses, how the pay changes, and how you move on in your career. Then there is a clear emphasis on structured thinking, communication, quantitative aptitude. You've seen this in the cases. They were a lot mathematically inclined. You broke it down by something by average times the total. And that is how you came across for the total number. So there was a lot of maths. There was a lot of business acumen in the consultant's toolkit that you had to use. And case interview tips, finally, I believe each of these has been covered in some part when they were walking you through the case or when they were answering these questions. Always cut to the chase, value first. I think this was one of the major points panelists told during the first 6 bucketed questions. Strike the balance between being a robot and being an artist. Again, you have to impress the interviewer, think the minds of the interviewer. When in doubt, take a step back, take your time and take stock. Again, all of these has been covered in some sense. So I guess we can move on from this. And